Hi guys, I'm Murphy. This will be my first video on this channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. This channel will be primarily about abortion, political issues, and my personal opinions on these matters. Today's video will be about abortion arguments, and I will be debunking / saying why they're wrong. A few weeks ago, I was curious and I searched up popular abortion arguments. I came across Britannica site named as Pros, Cons, and Arguments Surrounding Abortion, or something along those lines. In that site, I found a link to Abortion Rights National Pro-Choice Campaign, written in 2015. This list contained various arguments towards pro-abortion. I've selected a few of these arguments to be talked about today, and why I believe they are wrong. Now, before we begin, I would like to put out a disclaimer. I do not wish for any fights, arguments, or any harsh words to be started from this video. I also would like to keep it calm, and if you guys want to comment, which I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this, I would like it to be kept calm. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. I like to see just a various amounts of everything, but I would like it to stay calm, so keep that in mind. And one more note, if you have ever received an abortion, this is not a jab at you. In fact, I mourn your loss, and I hope that you are doing fine and better today, and that you are okay. I just hope you're okay. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Alright, so I have put the link to the document down below in the description. Now, the way that this document is set up is that it has a pro-life argument and then a pro-choice argument. Basically, it's for like if you're having a debate, it's like a guide to follow. So for example, if I was like a pro-choice person and someone told me, hey, this is my statement, you would have your sheet ready to say, oh, well, since here's your sheet, your statement here, here's my statement back. It's basically like a debate guide, which is what I'll be using for today. So I'll be debating the debate. Now let's get started. Pro-life argument 1. Embryos are people, therefore they have the right to life. If embryos are babies and babies are people, then embryos are people and they have the rights that people have. Now, the pro-choice response. The right to life doesn't include the right to use another person's body to survive. Even if embryos were babies and they had the right to life, they don't have the right to life at the expense of the pregnant person's body. No one has the right to use another person's body to survive. The government doesn't force healthy people to donate blood, marrow, or organs to people who would otherwise die without these things. Nor does the government compel parents to donate these items to their children. In fact, a parent can decide to sever all parental obligations, financial, emotional, and otherwise, by placing their child up for adoption. It is important to recognize that we're debating the use of governmental force here. We're not talking about moral obligations or social obligations, which can vary. Pro-lifers advocate for punishing people who abort because, in their eyes, people who abort are murderers. It is imperative that we are making that distinction. The right to life also doesn't imply a right to life by threatening somebody else's life. Bearing children is always a threat to the mother. It's always a threat to the life of the mother. I'm sorry, I am severely dyslexic. I will be tripping up a lot of my words. I've done multiple retakes. This is my final one. I've given up. So forgive me if I stumble on my words. My brain does not want to work today, thus the T. As a pro-lifer, this is going to be my response to this. Before we continue, it's important to note that this will be strictly from a legal sense, without any bias towards morals or ethics, as a pro-choice side has conceded to. It is also important to note that this is not an argument of should the government force people to not have abortions? It is, should the government allow people to have abortions? The key detail being that the standard throughout most history is that abortions is illegal. The question is, should we change that standard or not? Again, we will not touch on moral or ethical issues, though they play a great part in most of those decisions in early history. Quoting here, the right to life doesn't include the right to use another person's body to survive. End quote. That's from the pro-choice statement I just read a second ago. This statement is correct, yet most pro-choicers don't even realize that this argument in no way supports the pro-abortion movement. Let's break down how they use it to argue. The first point they bring up is that as the baby grows in the mother's womb, it does not have any right to demand any sort of care or nutrients to survive. Therefore, the mother has every right to deny that care to the child. In a legal sense, the mother is doing exactly what her body is designed to do. Every woman is born with the right bodily functions to create, support, and give birth to a wholly formed human child. She is not harming her body in any unnatural or artificial way. In fact, in a legal sense, the child is not using the mother's body to survive. The mother's body is naturally forming the child of its own design. The argument of unlawful use only applies in the case of an external agent exercising coercive control over another person's body, not in cases where bodily processes operate autonomously without intent or force from a dependent party. In this respect, pregnancy is not comparable to compelled bodily service imposed by another person, but to involuntary bodily functions such as digestion or circulatory system. Help me. Regardless of conscious intent. Speaking legally, it is not the child's choice to have been placed within the mother's womb either, as much as it is not within the child's conscious knowledge, as it takes resources and nutrients from the mother. So removing it from the mother's womb before the time of birth, under the legal precedent of unlawful use of another person's body, would not be, in fact, legal. It would be murder. Now, the argument that the parent can sever all obligations and place the child up for adoption is a valid one, only because the child's already born. So any care of the child would be not just a natural process of the mother's body. This argument also states that, quote, bearing children is always a threat to the life of a mother, end quote. While this is true, advancements in medicine and treatment have brought the risk to a near zero. Just because something imposes a tiny amount of risk doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. Everything you do, in fact, has a small risk involved, whether that be the risk of someone hacking your computer as you surf the web, or the risk of a high-speed collision as you drive to work, or the chance of a crash when you go on that one flight overseas. Everything has risk. It is simply impossible to escape, no matter how small. Simply because there's a small fraction or a percent of risk does not mean the activity should cease. And legally, there is no precedent to encourage abortions, nor to halt pregnancies due to this risk. The same way laws cannot be made to halt anything with risk. To put in perspective how low risk involved from pregnancy is, in the USA, 0.013 of all yearly pregnancies end in pregnancy-related deaths, the mother or the child, which is insanely low compared to that of a simple driving accident statistic or a heart-related incidents. It is a terrible legal argument for the termination of a child in the womb. That is my first argument on the matter. Alright, here we go with the next topic. Abortion should not be legal, as abortion must be stopped and the right to life must be protected. The pro-choice response to that is, laws have never stopped abortion. Legal abortion protects women's health and saves women's lives. The question is whether abortion should be legal, safe, and dignified, or illegal, dangerous, and fraught with fear and humiliation. Now, my response is that this exact argument is outdated, as it is illegal in 13 states to get an abortion. Each of these 13 states does allow exceptions depending on the case, but for the sake of time, we will not be reviewing each individual state's laws on this matter. The reason why this is outdated is because this was written in 2015. A law has changed. Legal abortions under the proper medical staff does protect a woman's health, as opposed to illegal abortions practiced by unlicensed or inadequately equipped medical providers. Illegal abortions can be unsafe for everyone involved, both legally and medically. The way this argument is conducted is, quote, would it be better to have a safe, dignified, legal abortion, or would forcing women to seek illegal, unsafe abortions that result in a multitude of problems be better? End quote. That's basically the summary. To be completely honest, this argument isn't really proving a point. I could say the same pretty much for any topic. For example, would it be better to seek proper medications prescribed by a doctor, or would forcing people to seek illegal, unsafe access to these drugs that result in multitude of problems be better? It is indeed healthier for a woman to receive legal abortions, but that does not mean it is right to do so. It's not right to murder a child within their own womb. Now for the next pro-life argument, it is, when do you think life begins? The pro-choice response to this is, the question is really when legal personhood begins. Eggs and sperm are alive, so are bacteria and all plants and animals. Of course, embryos and fetuses are alive. That doesn't mean, though, that abortion should be illegal or constitutes to murder. This is going to be my response to this. Legal personhood begins the moment of conception. A new organism has developed. This new organism has its own unique DNA, distinct from the mother and the father. It is its own individual being of the Homo sapiens species. It is neither a plant nor a non-sentient animal. It is the combined DNA of the egg and sperm of human parents. At any time of development, from a 5-week-old embryo to a 5-year-old child, both are under the same roof of developmental change. Science proved that it is indeed life at the moment of conception. It does indeed mean that abortion should be illegal, and it is murder. It is literally ending unborn life, as science shows again and again. Also, literally the pro-choice argument says, quote, of course, embryos and fetuses are alive. It's alive. What do you mean? What do you mean? Anyway, pro-life argument. I've seen pictures of highly developed fetuses, bloody abortions, tiny feet, fetuses in garbage cans. It is obvious that abortion is killing a baby. Now, the pro-choice response to that is, anti-choice visual materials are awfully grossly enlarging, undocumented, and mislabeled. They are cleverly designed to evoke emotions of repulsion, repulsiveness, I don't know, against abortion and sympathy towards the fetus. We should not take away women's rights because we are repelled by sensationalized images. Now my response to that is, what's the definition of a pro-life visual? Factually speaking, images used to educate on abortion do indeed show graphic, bloody imagery of aborted fetuses and embryos. Imagery of what happens when the deliberate termination of human pregnancy occurs is open and accessible to the public, and it's very educational to everyone, especially the mother. Legally speaking, the term grossly enlarged is factually false and can be easily debunked by a simple search on actual imagery of an actual abortion. The imagery is not sensationalized, it is simply documentational and true. If they invoke emotions or turn people away, it is simply because the medical termination of a child is grossly wrong. For the next pro-life argument, it says, I'm against abortion on demand. The pro-choice response to that is, no one is forced to have an abortion. That is the way it should be. So a woman can't just demand an abortion. But what you're saying means that you think a woman should have to overcome lots of hurdles in order to exercise her right to choice. I disagree. For some, although not all, women, the choice may be difficult, and the government shouldn't add obstacles on the assumption that she can't reason about moral issues for herself. It is extremely patronizing to pressure that women and pregnant people cannot make their own decisions about what is best for themselves and their body. Excuse me? I cannot read fluently. I'm so sorry. Now, my response to this is that no, women and human alike, nobody, should have to overcome hurdles to exercise their right to bodily liberty. Neither should a government block or obstruct them from the same freedom. They have the freedom to make their own decisions about what is best for themselves and their individual body. Contrary, in the case of a pregnant mother, it is no longer only her body she must take into consideration, as there is now another being to protect and be mindful of when practicing bodily liberty. Just how it is precautionary of the risks of smoking, vaping, and alcohol use when pregnant. Backtracking to the first statement, neither should an unborn human be blocked from liberty to their own body. The pro-choice movement has already conceded to the fact that a fetus / embryo, whatever, is alive and human. And going off of that, yes, it is a human, and this baby has right to their own body. This should not be removed from the womb. It's their own body. Alright, that will be it for today's video. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, please comment your opinions on this topic and what I've said about it, primarily on what I've said about it, because I'd like to have constructive advice on what you think I should make mention of in the future. Again, I hope that you all will respect what I've mentioned earlier about keeping hateful words out of opinions and stuff, as I use no hateful words myself. I like the same response. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed rest of your day, and that you take care.